Alright, my people. I wasn't going to do this post, but it seems like I have to because, my people, we have a problem and we're falling fast and we're listening to the enemies. And the people who are not our enemies, we're confused by. And I think we've been fooled by this once before and we're getting fooled by it again. You understand? Politicians are our enemies. Donald Trump is not a politician. You see? You gotta think. You gotta remember that. The politicians have always lied to us. Donald Trump is not a politician. Donald Trump fought the politicians, won, and now he's sitting in that spot as a regular American being. But that being aside, the question that I wanted to address to you was, is Kanye West right? Or is he crazy? Right? Is slavery a choice? What his entire statement was, after 400 years, that seems like a choice. I mean, 400 years, all of that time, all of those people, it seems like we were mentally enslaved. Now, the fact is, we did outnumber slave masters by hundreds to one. The fact is that slaves escaped and slaves died. These are facts. Okay? So, the slave master came to Africa, or the slave trader came to Africa and bargained and conquered and got slaves through many means. So slavery initiated, it was not a choice. But what he said was, after 400 years, that sounds like a choice. And you got to think about it. After 400 years of slavery, it would have to be. But here's the problem. The problem is that people don't want to blame the victim. You don't want to blame the victim. It's why women still get raped in Central Park, because we don't want to take responsibility or force people to take responsibility for things that happen negatively in their lives. You must do that. And we've been taught that many years ago, hundreds of years ago, and we still do it to this day. Alright? You have to evaluate things that happen in your life in order to prevent them from happening again. Alright? You have to evaluate your role in what happens in your life. Alright, so let's think about it. When slavery began, it was not a choice. But the slave master, through his years and realizing that the slaves would eventually revolt and break free, which was his biggest fear, it created mental entrapment, or a form of mental slavery, in order to keep us slaving ourselves. That is Willie Lynch's theory. Willie Lynch's theory specifically says that you cannot keep a person enslaved. You must teach them to enslave themselves. So here is the point. Was slavery a choice? Absolutely, because the slaves were presented with two options: do as we say or die. Now, those options were slim, they were ugly, they were terrible options, but yet still they were options. And the options that the slave chose, which is the option that most people would choose, would be to live. That doesn't change the fact that they had a choice. And some slaves chose to die rather than be slaves. Some slaves chose to run rather than be slaves. It's unfortunate, because of the way genetics works, is that the ones that chose to die were the ones that weren't able to pass on their genes. And so now we are the result of the slaves that stayed. We are the results. We are the offspring of the slaves that chose to stay because persecution was too great. Chose to stay because master was so good. Chose to stay because of fear. Chose to stay because they didn't even know that being a slave was wrong. Chose to stay for complacency. Chose to stay because the brainwashing worked. Chose to stay for whatever reason you want to make it, but they chose to stay. That's my point. And unfortunately, and as inconsiderate as that statement may be, it's a truthful statement, and we must analyze it in order to get out of the situation we're in now.